I'm up at Far Hills at an event sponsored by Mars and Essex, and they have this history of chocolate going back to 600 BC. And because I'm shooting in 4K, you may be able to see everything. And I'm assuming this booth is sponsored by Mars.
It is the American Heritage Chocolate brand.
And then here's the other part. And because it's in 4K, you should be able to read it. And there's a whole bunch of stuff on the table. And I didn't get your name?
Dave.
Dave's going to tell us about it. So we come over here,
Sure.
and there's a fake.
So these are actually replica cocoa pods, and they give you this sense of the size and the weight of a cocoa pod, if only you could hold one. And you also get a chance to see the cocoa beans and what they would look like inside a cocoa pod. And as you notice, they're more white than they would have been brown, which is what you'd think of them. But in the field, they go through a couple of different processing stages, one called fermentation, the second called drying, to remove as much moisture as possible from the beans, start changing them into the different color that you're familiar with, the brown, and also starting to set up that flavor of cocoa. And then the beans are roasted, and back in early American days, cocoa beans would have been roasted over an open fire, so chocolate making back then was far more of an art than it was a science. The chocolate maker had to know when the beans were properly roasted to make the proper chocolate that they wanted to make.
All right, the question I have is, once it comes out of the cocoa pod and they lay it on their sheets or whatever in the sun, how long do they let it dry in the sun?
So they let it ferment for about a week. So again, that's setting up the flavor and starting to dry the beans. And then drying takes anywhere between 2 to 5 days, depending on the conditions. But again, they try to get the moisture level down to about 7 to 8% in the beans. But farmers only know that by their knowledge of how the beans appear and how they look. They don't use science and technology to do that. Then after the beans are roasted, the the chocolate maker would then take their beans, and back in early American days, they would use a basket like this called a winnowing basket. The winnowing basket was used to remove the little thin shell that surrounds the bean.
And
again,
this.
the shells don't add any value in chocolate making, but what we're trying to go after are these delicious cocoa nibs. So cocoa nibs are really the building block of our chocolate. And again, this is the same cocoa nibs that we use today. Cocoa nibs back in early American chocolate making would have been placed on a heated stone like this one called a metate. And metates are still used today in chocolate making. Literally, the stone's heated up, the cocoa nibs are placed on the metate, and then those nibs are literally just melted down into a sweet little liquid paste like this. But in early American chocolate making, and in today's chocolate making in certain parts of the world, chocolate isn't just about cocoa and sugar and a few other things. It was about adding different spices to our chocolate.
All right, well, I don't know what that one is. Everything else, I think I know.
Okay, so this is orange.
That's orange.
So orange would have come
peel.
over from the Far East. Yep. So either orange juice or even the peel. Also, we have cinnamon, chili, salt, and sugar.
And that's Himalayan salt. That's why it's pink.
And then also you would have used anise just to give it a different flavor, vanilla, and a nutmeg. Now, not all chocolate contained all of these. Some chocolates contained other flavors depending on what was available to the chocolate maker. Also, there was the issue of cost. So how much would have these different commodities have cost and what was available in the early trade routes? But the chocolate maker would have taken these different spices, placed them on the metate, and literally just blended them into that cocoa. So a couple of different reasons they would have done that. First thing, take the edge off the bitterness of the cocoa, because cocoa by itself is pretty bitter. But also people enjoyed flavor. And again, different flavors were enjoyed by different people in different parts of the globe. But after the chocolate maker would have blended their chocolate, they would have then scraped it into a mold like you see here. And again, that provided the piece that was then saleable to whoever their constituency was. So different people who might have purchased chocolate might have been shopkeepers, might have been people like tavern keepers, as well as what we call public houses or inns where people would gather for drinks. Also, you could take your chocolate home. One of the things you might not have known was that we actually drank our chocolate. For over 3,500 years, the primary means of enjoying our chocolate was drinking it. We didn't really start eating our chocolate until the mid to late 1800s.
When was milk added to it? Do you know?
Yep. So about 1876 is the first record of ever adding condensed milk to chocolate by a Swiss chocolate maker, a guy named Daniel Peter. And he had to use condensed milk because if you just had a regular dairy milk that wasn't condensed,
Yeah.
it was too wet, it'd make your chocolate gross, right? Make it too liquefied. So again, after we took our molded chocolate, we get a piece of chocolate like this. Consumers would have then taken their chocolate, grated it into now it was your chocolate to make your drink, using a chocolate pot similar to this one, or just an open pot, using primarily water, but they could have used dairy if it was available. Literally blended their chocolate into a delicious chocolate drink. And that is the origin of our chocolate.
All right. Thank you very much, Mars. And I would love to thank DJI Gimbal. It died on me, so if you see it shaking a little, it's very windy here. So that's what you see shaking. Look, it's shaking. All right, we need to go get a new battery for our gimbal, so I got a long walk. Thank you very much, Mars. We enjoyed the history of chocolate.